Welcome back, everybody. Friday, September 1st, John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Chicago for these next week and a half to talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Actually, next week, week from Saturday. Anyway, hey guys, how we doing? I'm going to get rolling on TikTok here, and then, as always, introduce yourselves, say where you're from. We will wait 2 minutes for folks to arrive from the, I don't know, multiverse or wherever you are hiding, and then we will start the show. There we go. Woo! God, this whole summer being over thing. At least I live in Washington, where it could be 90 degrees in a month. So summer's over, but not quite in DC. But still crazy though. Hey everybody. Hey TikTokers. Hey Little Wolf, Laka and Carlos. Try to do my shout outs for the members. Sally. Who else we got here today? Karen. And we got a lot of you here today. Can't look in here. It's funny. Yesterday when I tried to find you guys, I couldn't find anybody. There we go. Anyway, hey guys. Oh, happy Friday all. Oh, and Europeans, happy Friday evening in Europe. Thank you, Crazy American. Anyway, yeah. So a lot of interesting news today, actually. Thank you, user 336. No bad news that I can think of. A lot of good news, actually. Thank you, Elizabeth. But yeah, interesting news today. So I think we will have a good uplifting-ish show. Oh, Crazy American overseas. I guess I didn't fully appreciate you were in Germany. Oh well. Anyway, Nova Scotia. Interesting last name too, Paul. Spelling. Ice cream, topping, sprinkles, or Jimmy's. I mean, well, ants actually. So we grew up calling the little chocolate sprinkly things chocolate ants. So different word. Thank you, Charles, for the gift on TikTok, and John S as well. Thank you guys. And Richard and Royce. Oh, Big Hawk. Thank you. I always like shaking those things around. Anyway, yeah, guys, we're gonna maybe another half minute and then we'll get started. I always, like I said, I like to kind of have people introduce yourselves, and then it gives time for sort of the message to get out there on TikTok and YouTube that we're live. Hey, Latvia, Mr. Misterioso. Hey, Maukab. Good to see you too. St. John's, Netherlands. No. St. John's, Netherlands? I didn't know there was such a thing. Hey, Elizabeth. I mean, there's a St. John's, like in the Caribbean, which I may have been. No, I was close, but I don't think I went to there exactly. Kharkiv. Oh, hey, Vlad in Kharkiv. Good to see you. Different Vlad, but a good Vlad nonetheless. I do Give Me Food is asking, how do you do metrics and where your audience is from? I look, TikTok gives me the metrics. So, for example, I don't want to waste too much time because I don't want to bore people, but let me see if I can actually pull this up on my TikTok. But I can pull up my lives and see where people were from previously. So I can look here. Okay, let me look. Yesterday's show, really quick. I won't take a lot of time here, but just to tell you guys. Come on, yesterday's show, for example. Here we go. Yesterday's show. US, my live yesterday. US, 68%. UK, 10%. Interesting. Canada, 5%. Ireland, 1%. And then the rest of you are others. So there's others, 16%. Thank you, Purnell. So can't say where the rest of you are from. Not surprising, a lot of Brits. 10% UK is interesting, though. Hey, Glasgow, but I guess because of the timing, it works too. All right, guys, let me get rolling here. So welcome, John Aravosis here. This is my nightly show I do Monday to Friday. Thank you, Ellie, for the gift. 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Thank you, Dano. The way the show works, I will do about a half hour of news or so, give or take, depending. I mean, sometimes we throw some questions in and it goes longer. And the second half of the show is always based on your guys' questions for me. Oh, hello, Bita in Lviv, or Bita in Lviv. Good to see you. That would be in Western Ukraine. Very nice. Oh, yeah. So, and basically, okay. So questions, second half of the show. If you guys want to do a super chat question to help my work, because you buy those and I get some benefit from that, you can certainly do that on YouTube. And as a thank you, I will always get to super chat questions as the next topic I talk about. I try to get to all the questions, but there's no way to. Whereas super chat questions, I will always get to. Thank you, LWD. And I very much appreciate the gifts on TikTok as well. So please keep them coming. And I will always do a shout out for the larger ones that I see. So thank you for that. Like Purnell doing the little dog there. So, all right, guys, let's get rolling here. So it's day 555 of Vladimir Putin's 3-day special military operation. The tires have arrived. You guys were asking me the other day for a tire update. So we had done a fundraiser to get tires for 3 ambulances in Ukraine. They're ambulances that help the military. Thank you, Ellie. But they also help civilians. And Vlad just sent me, thank you, Sean. They were having a very hard time getting the tires for the ambulances. They finally were able to secure them. They've got them in Kharkiv, Ukraine. Real quick, these are the tires. Woo woo! Showing off, rolling them inside the building. So they've got the tires for the 3 ambulances. Thank you, Manda. Vlad said they need to go now and get a few extra supplies because we were also raising money for spare parts for the vehicles. But anyway, they got the tires. So they will do more videos sort of as, as the ambulances get fitted up with the tires. But thank you guys again. We raised $1,700 for the ambulances. 100% of the money went to those guys. I didn't touch a dime and you guys helped out. So thank you all. That was very cool. Thank you, Phil Jacobs, for the super sticker. So tomorrow morning, remember, we've got our coffee talk, 11 a.m. Eastern time US. Thank you, LWD. That's where I do my show just for the paid monthly subscribers as a thank you show. So that will be Saturday morning on TikTok. Thank you, Ava. 11 a.m. Eastern for the TikTok subscribers, and all the rest of the monthly subscribers, Discord, Twitch, YouTube, what am I forgetting? Ko-fi, and maybe something else. Thank you, Dano. You guys can join me on Discord. Look for the weekly show. It's already an event that's created. So join me at 11 a.m. Eastern. So thank you all for that. Thank you, LWD. So let's start with the news. So Ukraine is slated to receive by the way, perfect timing, because you guys were asking about this yesterday. Political reports that Ukraine is going to get the first 10, thank you, Life. Thank you, Life. That sounds cute. Ukraine's going to get the first 10 of the Abrams tanks that the U.S. promised. We promised 31 tanks. The first 10 should arrive in the next 2 weeks. Thank you, Ava. By the middle of September. Around 200 Ukrainians have just finished their training in Germany on a variety of things, basically how to use the Abrams, but also combined arms training, where they are learning how to basically use these tanks combined with all the rest of their weapons they've got. So all the rest of their assets, I should say. In other words, infantry on the ground, tanks, artillery, maybe even planes and drones. But basically, how do you stitch everything together so you leverage your power, but also you protect it too, right? The tank could be protecting somebody else and somebody else is protecting the tank. And you've got to sort of have everything work together. So they did that kind of training too. Anyway, very good news on that. Thank you, Marie. Reuters reports that the Biden administration is going to announce next week for the first time it is sending depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine. That will be announced next week. The Brits, as you may recall, already did this months ago. So it's not new. The Russians, of course, freaked out when the Brits did it. It's basically ammunition you can use in the tanks, in the Abrams tanks in the American case. And it's kind of funny because the Russians freaked out when the Brits announced this months ago and said, oh my God, you're using nuclear arms. And this kind of, because it's depleted uranium. It's uranium that's been basically spent. Thank you, Martin. And what it does is, the uranium ends up being so dense and solid that it's able to just punch through tanks and things. In other words, the weapons, the shells that are made of this can just go right through. And as they go through, they pretty much set everything on fire. Because I don't quite know the physics of it, but it's magic in essence and very deadly. But the Russians freaked out. But here's an important point here. The Russians freaked out and accused the Brits of using weapons related to nuclear weapons or some such thing. The Russians have been using depleted uranium in the war from the beginning. Of course, classic Russian, right? Something they're doing, they accuse you of doing, right? Thank you, Tomcat, of that. Anyway, so that's good news. Russian media reports a fire in a factory workshop that produces electronics for missiles. Thank you. I've got Tomcat, Dad over here, and Adventures for the gifts on TikTok. Thank you, guys. There's reportedly a fire in a factory workshop that produces electronics for missiles. The Tomolinsky Electronic Factory in Moscow region reportedly produces components for Caliber missiles, and it is on fire. Okay, so before I started the show, I saw a rather large Wall Street Journal article. It came out a few hours ago, but it's interesting update. Thank you, Dora. about the counteroffensive, and I thought it might be useful to read you some of it because it's just really good. And I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, and a lot of folks don't, so I also feel there's some added value there anyway in letting you guys hear from a smart paper you may not subscribe to. Now, just to give you like the overlay of the counteroffensive, and then I'll read the article, right? Russia controls 17% of Ukraine. So all of this, the sort of the line between the Russian troops and the Ukrainian troops is more or less along the river, more or less. There's some Ukrainians on the south side, but along the river, cutting over here and then cutting up. So the Russians control all of this, right? The biggest fighting, really, I would say the biggest fighting for the counteroffensive, the most important, is taking place right around here in Zaporizhia, okay? Towns like Robotine that the Ukrainians got last week, Verbove, or however you pronounce it, Novopropo, thank you, Dinover, Novopropopivka, there you go, and Tokmak, very important, because that's around here, and then Melitopol, the prize, right? Ukraine wants to cut the occupation in half, which causes all sorts of problems for Russian logistics, especially when it comes to Crimea in this area. So anyway, that's what we're talking about, that main fighting, okay? Now, let me read you this. So Tokmak, as I was telling you, real quick. Oh, sorry. Thank you, boy mom. And Elizabeth. Tokmak, that is pretty funny that it follows you. Thank you, LWD. So Tokmak, as I said, is a big city along the way. Very important, very strategic, important, I think, road and rail hub for the Russians. So just causing problems in Tokmak alone causes problems for the Russians. That's the town we're going to talk about. So Tokmak is between where the Ukrainians are now, Tokmak, and then Melitopol, the goal. Okay. All right. Wall Street Journal. While Tokmak is the biggest nearby target for advancing Ukrainian troops, they may not launch an attack on the city, which sits roughly 13 miles south of Robotine, the town the Ukrainians took like in the last week, and is now ringed by Russian fortifications, say Western analysts. If Kyiv's troops can push the front lines to about 6 miles outside Tokmak, Ukrainian artillery forces with plentiful 155 millimeter cannons will be able to target its rail and road lines, said Trent Telenko, a former official at the Pentagon. Extending the front to within 6 miles will make Tokmak useless as a road rail transportation node, said Telenko. At that distance, Ukrainian artillery can stay about 10 miles behind the front, which he said is a sufficient distance to be relatively safe from Russian counter-battery fire. I'm going to read more, but what he's saying is, Tokmak is super well defended. If you look at any of the maps that show the Russian defense, you see this circle around the town of Tokmak. All the Ukrainians need to do is get within 10 miles of Tokmak. They don't need to take the town. Taking the town is going to be very difficult because the Russians have great defenses. But when they get within 10 miles, their artillery will be able to just blast the town. So they can blast the Russians to smithereens as a siege, basically, and they don't have to risk taking the town. Now, maybe they'll take it after they blast the Russians. But anyway, that's what he's talking about. There's more. Ukrainian military leaders hope that piercing the Russian front at Verbove, which is one of the other towns the Russians are going after in the area, will allow them to open a much larger breach and flood it with dozens of Western-made tanks and armored vehicles. To protect such a high-profile force from Russian attack, combat veterans say Ukrainian forces must clear a path of at least 10 miles wide and preferably much wider, which will be difficult. But even a smaller gap threatens Russian forces, says Dave DeMoro, a retired U.S. Army non-commissioned officer who spent years in the frontline military intelligence during the Cold War and in Iraq. Smaller, less armored vehicles, such as, this was interesting to me, such as Humvees or speedy attack squads operating behind Russia's forward-facing lines could cause havoc. He's talking about once you've broken through the lines, even if you don't open up a huge front, but you've got a small front, you can start to send vehicles through there and cause all sorts of havoc because now the Russians have got you fighting in front, but there's some vehicle behind fighting at them, and it starts to cause chaos because they're surrounded. Listen to this. Russians can't fight in 360 degrees. They're just not trained for that, he said. Even a Hummer, right? Even a Humvee with a 50 caliber machine gun on it will tear up an artillery unit because the unit won't be equipped to return fire at short range. Very interesting. So just in case anybody's joining us, I'm talking about a very interesting Wall Street Journal article today that was getting into the issue of what Ukraine's goals are right now in the counteroffensive, the immediate targets of going after Tokmak. Thank you, user 978. A really important goal of going after Tokmak, an important town coming up, and how the Ukrainians don't even need to take Tokmak. They can stop about 10 miles out and just blast it with their artillery, which is good. Now, one interesting point, by the way, I will say, they were talking, another thing the article, I mean, I'm done with the article, but another thing the article mentioned was, as the Ukrainians go further south, they can then start to hit the coastal highway. I think it's called the M14 highway in Ukraine. This coastal highway that's super important for supplying the Russian troops. Now, the Russian troops get supplies in one of two ways. Russia is over here. So, and this is occupied Ukraine. So the Russians can take this coastal highway more or less down here, right? I'm going to guess it's around here. Or they can come through Crimea across the Kerch Bridge that the Ukrainians keep bombing. Well, Ukraine would like to be able to bomb this highway regularly. In order to do that, they can use HIMARS, but it takes basically the HIMARS that currently maybe 50 miles about the weapons the U.S. has given them for the HIMARS system, for the rocket system. The Ukrainians want a weapon that can go almost 200 miles. The Americans are refusing to give it to the Ukrainians. It's called ATACMS. Well, the problem is the Ukrainians are about 50 miles from this road, but they would have to put, thank you, Adam, they would have to put the HIMARS right at the edge where the fighting is. Thank you, Lee. They would have to put the HIMARS at the front. And they don't want to put such a valuable system, they only have like 20 of them, right at the front where all the fighting's happening, because it's going to get bombed by the Russians, right? But they have no choice. Well, basically, the only choice they have is not to use the HIMARS to bomb this super important supply highway for the Russians. Well, you know what? If America had given them the ATACMS weapons that the Ukrainians wanted, ATACMS, by the way, are fired from HIMARS as well, the Ukrainians would be able to hit this highway already and cause all sorts of problems for Russian reinforcements. And if the Russians can't get reinforcements in, whether it's troops, whether it's food, whether it's fuel, whether it's ammunition, whether it's guns, right? The Russians are going to have a harder time in the counteroffensive. This is why so many of us, me included, have been complaining about Biden refusing to give Ukraine these weapons, even though the Brits and the French have already given them weapons that can shoot as far, if not farther, but not for the HIMARS. Thank you, Chief. It's really freaking obnoxious that Biden is refusing to do this. Thank you, Cammie. And at the same time, we're still hearing criticism from the Biden administration, very, off the record kind of thing to the press, to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, criticizing Ukraine. Thank you, Jetta. Criticizing Ukraine when Ukraine slowed down because the Biden administration isn't giving them everything they need. Anyway, I digress. Thank you. I would block me too for that. Bash Brannigan is asking, do Abrams tanks require much training? What was the training, guys? Remind me, wasn't it like 10 weeks? I'm trying to remember. How long was the Abrams training? It wasn't as bad as, it certainly wasn't like the F-16s or anything. I'll get the phone in here. I'll have to grab the phone so I can turn it off if it comes up again. How long was the Abrams training? Was it 10 weeks? I'm trying to remember, Bash. If anybody. There we go. Okay, and we're back. What I was going to say is it's one thing to train them how to drive the thing, which isn't very hard. It's another thing to train them how to use it, combined arms with all the other armaments, the artillery, the infantry, all that kind of stuff, right? That takes a lot more training. But yeah, 12 weeks was what I remember, basically. Thank you, Allie, for the TikTok gift. I'll do a quick grain update. 2 ships have left the Ukrainian port of Odessa. Actually, not Odessa, a port in the Odessa Oblast, Pivdeny port, through a corridor organized by the Ukrainian Navy. So basically, 2 more commercial ships have managed to get out of Ukraine safely without Russia being able to touch them, without Russia being able to even stop them, which is very interesting. The ship got out. Now, what the Ukrainians are doing, we talked about this before, they are basically sending ships out of southern Ukraine and then hugging the coast and staying in NATO waters, right? So if you hug the coast, for example, Romania, NATO, then you get to Bulgaria, NATO, then you get to Turkey, NATO, right? And then once you get through Turkey, you could do more Turkey or you can do Greece. Let's see if the Russians would really do anything once they were in the Aegean. But what gets interesting is just that the Ukrainians have so far found a way of basically stopping the Russians from stopping these grain ships. Let's see what happens as time goes on. It's clearly a conundrum for the Russians at the moment because they don't want to invade NATO waters. That's a problem. And frankly, NATO would be forced to respond. We can't allow the Russians to operate with impunity in our territorial waters. And the Russians had better be careful if they were to use live fire within NATO waters. I think all hell would break loose. So very interesting. I'll do a quick one on the Russian missile, and then I'll do my little pitch. So the Russians announced today, to much fanfare, their new nuclear ICBM intercontinental ballistic missile is operational. Oh my God! It's called the Sarmat. It's the Satan II. Apparently, it's Satan II because Satan I didn't work too well. But it's the Satan II missile, and honestly, none of you should give a darn about it. Nobody cares. Basically, the Russians have got a lot of nukes. We've got a lot of nukes. They're decommissioning one of their missiles, and they're commissioning this missile in its stead. Who cares? Thank you, Succeed. Also, as one observer, this is more for the geeks among you, but one observer said that basically this new missile is basically a redo of the Russian SS-18, which was a Soviet missile. We're now talking going back 30 plus years, right? It's nothing new. Maybe it's a little fancier. Bottom line is, it doesn't matter how many new missiles Russia comes up with. As somebody just said, we shouldn't assume that the missile actually works. That's one of the other points. I mean, this is Russia after all, right? But let's pretend the missile works. So Russia gets a new missile. What happens? They fire at us. Okay. What happens if they fire at us? We fire back at them. They die. We die, they die. Okay. So what, right? Are they going to do it? I mean, we've got nuclear. Bottom line, I give this speech before. I don't want to give too much of a shortening of the speech, but I give it so often. We have nuclear submarines. So do the British and the French. Nuclear submarines are almost impossible to detect. If the Russians were to attack us with this missile, our nuclear submarines would respond, and Moscow and St. Petersburg and all the top Russian cities would literally be wiped off the map. It would be the end of the world, but it would also be the end of Russia, and every Russian would be gone. There is no way any Russian leader is going to attack us with this new missile because we will attack him back. Period. And by the way, the same thing. Thank you, Tom, for that. I don't think I've seen that one before. Thank you. The same logic applies to us attacking Russia. We're not going to attack Russia first with nukes because Russia's got nuclear submarines. They're going to respond and kill us. So it just doesn't matter that this missile, thank you, Salty, that this missile's out. Who cares? I mean, we've still got nuclear submarines. We would destroy them if they did it. Now, one thing, Dr. Ian Garner had noted something very funny with regards to this. He said that Russia's Pravda was, of course, bragging about the missile. And of course, you will be surprised to hear not only were the Russians bragging about the missile, but of course, they were bragging about how easily they could nuke London because London lives rent-free in Russia's head. I don't know what we've talked about this before. I don't know what the Brits did, but Russia is so jealous of the United Kingdom. It's not even funny. Everything they do is talk about London, how they're going to nuke London. Again, they're not going to nuke London. Members of NATO and their own nuclear submarines, the Brits would destroy Russia in response. But listen to this. So the Russians are bragging that they could destroy London with their new missile in 6 minutes. Ian writes, last year, they said it would take 3.5 minutes. He goes, sounds like it's getting worse, but I just thought that was funny. By the way, this is the issue which people say, like, when you lie, like when you tell the truth, it's easy because even if your memory slips, just tell the truth, right? You'll always tell the truth. When you're lying, you've always got to remember your previous lies because your next lie has to be based on it. And the Russians lied last year and now they're lying again and they screwed up their lives. Anyway, it made me laugh. Just a quick pitch for supporting my work again. Thank you, Kanowski, by the way. There you go. With the gifts on TikTok and YouTube. I do this for free, guys, and I do it full time. It's literally my job. I don't make money elsewhere, so your gifts make a huge difference because quite literally your gifts keep me on the air. So thank you for that. You can also support in other ways. I've got PayPal and Venmo and all that kind of stuff. You can find that at aravosis.com. My last name, Aravosis. You see it on TikTok. You see it on YouTube, aravosis.com. It's my link of links. Everything's there. You can find my PayPal, my Venmo, my Cash App. Thank you, McFadge. You can also keep doing the gifts on TikTok. You can do the super chat, super stickers, and you can do memberships. There's TikTok memberships, where you basically do a monthly subscription to support me for a month, or month by month, I should say. It's TikTok right there. You guys can do it on YouTube. All the green folks, the green names are the folks who are the monthly members. We've got Laka, we've got Carlos, we had Ann earlier today, I saw. We've got Suspense, Carrie, lots of you guys. Those are all the monthly members. Thank you, by the way, all of you. I can see your name, so I appreciate that. But you can donate there on YouTube by becoming a member. You can do it on Discord. You can do it on Ko-fi. You guys have the link there. Ko-fi, you can find the link in my aravosis.com or the link on TikTok, my URL. Lots of ways you guys can support my work. Or frankly, if it's too confusing, keep the gifts coming. Easiest way to do it. Portion of every gift goes to your creator, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube. So it's very helpful. Please do keep helping out, guys. Thank you. CNN spoke with Ukrainian teenagers who claim, I'm going to read you the CNN story here. This is the last story. It was on CNN. It's about the ongoing issue with Russia stealing kids from Ukraine. And we know they've been doing this for a while now, basically kidnapping children and trying to turn them into Russians. It's really sick. But listen to this. CNN spoke with Ukrainian teenagers in Kyiv who claimed that they have been forcefully deported to Russia before being found and brought home by family members. Quote, I was there for 4 months, and throughout these 4 months, I had to sing the Russian national anthem. That was compulsory, said Nastya Motichak, a 15-year-old girl who said she was taken from the southern Kherson region and sent to Russian-occupied Crimea. We asked, why aren't we being collected? Meaning, why aren't our families coming to get us? When will the buses come? Why aren't we allowed out? She said. She was told by the Russian guards that the buses were too expensive. I mean, listen to this, right? They kidnapped these kids. And when they were saying, why aren't we going home? It's too expensive to send you home, right? Now, I'm going to read a little more of the article. Previous articles, previous kids that were interviewed, they literally told them either their parents were dead or their parents didn't love them anymore and had abandoned them. That was one of the previous things the Russians have told these kids. Imagine telling this to a kid, right? Listen to this. It gets better. So she remained in the center during Christmas and into the beginning of the year, and she said she was only granted access to basic necessities if she performed. Oops, sorry, did the mic get weird? Oops, sorry, checking with guys. It shouldn't have. How we doing, guys? TikTok being evil. You know what? I'm gonna let me try TikTok one more time. TikTok does this. All right, hold on. I know I unplugged my mic. That was on purpose. That was obvious. All right, mods, real quick. I know you guys on YouTube are okay. Mods, how are we doing on TikTok? Is it still bad? Should I unplug it? How's it now? Is it good now? Still sounds muffled. All right, I'm unplugging. All right, there we go. I unplugged. Now we're going to use my iPad mic instead. That mic's fine. It's a little distant, but it's fine. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. So listen to this. She said she was only granted access to basic necessities if she performed acts of Russian patriotism. There were some secondhand clothing and hygiene products delivered for us. So when we asked for these, okay, secondhand clothing and hygiene was delivered, and when the kids asked to get them, basically they were delivered and the kids wanted them, they were told, whoever doesn't like Russia doesn't like me and isn't going to get these things. So they told these kids they weren't going to get it because they didn't like Russia. Ukrainian prosecutors have said they've opened more than 3,000 cases of alleged Russian crimes against children, including murder, torture, and sexual violence. Russia has admitted to having some 700,000 children that are now in Russia that they claim they saved from Ukraine. So kind of crazy. All right, guys, I cannot understand how the mic would be bad. It's TikTok being evil. Can I see? Really? Okay, this is TikTok doing this. Sorry, guys. I mean, you know what I can do? I hate to do it. All right, I'm gonna close TikTok and come back in. All right, guys. No, I'm closing TikTok and coming back in. TikTok's having a connection. You guys are fine. You guys, I'm not putting the mic back because TikTok's having a problem. I'm going off and coming back. Boop. There we go. Yeah, TikTok is clearly doing something because it would have been fine. Here we go. All right, go live. I'm going to plug my mic back in. Let's see if that helps. But TikTok's being weird. The fact that both mics, even my iPad mic wasn't working means something bad's going on there. Because the iPad mouse always works as a backup on TikTok. So, all right, hopefully. Anyway, actually, that was it for the news. We'll wait one quick second for the TikTokers to come back. All right, and hopefully the sound is better. Ha ha ha. Just us girls here on YouTube and Twitch and LinkedIn and Facebook and blah blah blah. All right, guys, better? Yep. I came back, and now I'm using my mic on TikTok again. So hopefully no, that's what I mean. There was something weird with TikTok itself that even the iPad mic wasn't working. And when the iPad mic doesn't work, then you know there's a problem because the iPad mic always works. Yeah. No, that's all right. All right. So I finished with the news. I want to show you guys a couple auction items, and then we will take your questions. So as you guys know, this was good. I did the news in half an hour. That's a first. So as you guys know, I've got a Discord community, discord.aravosis.com. And over at the Discord, we have auctions, and we use the auctions to basically showcase cool Ukrainian cool stuff I get in Ukraine, or I get from Ukraine. Thank you, DMR. And I auction this stuff off, and 50% of the proceeds we send back to Ukraine, and we use it to help people there, the war effort, citizens in trouble, stuff like that. And the other 50% goes to support me, because this is quite literally my full-time job. Nobody pays me, but the way I get paid for this is all the gifts and things you guys give, such as Elizabeth giving the wonderful garland on TikTok. Thank you. Or Carlos and Anne and the others, and Laka, and I'm trying to see, and whoever else here. I'm going to scroll up to everybody, but the folks in Mustard. Oh, hey, Mustard. Hope you're doing well. And the other folks on YouTube. But we do our auctions too. Mustard is a big fan of our auctions, I know. So 3 of the auction items we've got this week. One, I like this because I think it's just very pretty, but it's a Ukrainian fridge magnet. Thank you, Kevin. And it's a fridge magnet for the Kalush Orchestra. They are the Ukrainian band that won the Eurovision Song Contest a year ago in 2022. But it's a neat fridge magnet, because I don't know if you can tell, I'm leaving the wrapper on, but because I just think the color is beautiful. But nice little fridge magnet, very cool. Second thing, and this I think is very cool too, it is a Ukrainian police badge, but it's kind of funny because it's a Ukrainian traffic cop police badge. I love that they're traffic cops, but it's kind of cool. It's from the 1990s. It's real. The traffic cop is from Kherson. Remember, Kherson is, dropping my pencil, is the town all the way down here that was occupied by the Russians and now is not occupied them. It's also the town that the Russians flooded when they blew up the dam. Kherson is also the region, but it's also a town. And it's from Kherson, and the reason you can tell is because if you zoom in and look at the number on the bottom, you see in English what looks like XH. In Ukrainian, that's H and N for Kherson. So it's Kherson 0058. You guys can see here. You see, the X and the H is actually H-N. So Kherson 0058. I just think it's really pretty and cool. And then the back, it's a little hook. You can see the back. Anyway, I think it's very cool. I think Mustard may have already bought one. I don't recall. I don't recall. The third thing, and this one is my favorite, and I've shown you guys this before. I'll try to do the quick pitch. But basically, it is a wonderful little commemorative box Ukrainians made. And you open the box, and it stands like this, and it contains a piece of a Russian helicopter shot down outside of Kyiv. Thank you, Shane, for that. Thanks for the related topic of air stuff. Shot down near Kyiv the first 3 days of the war. So the first days of the war, the Russians wanted to take Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. So it's the little commemorative piece you can see on it. And then the back of it, you can actually see the actual piece of metal from the helicopter. The first couple of days of the war, actually first day of the war, the Russians were trying to take the capital. And they were going to take the airport, the Hostomel airport that's right there outside of Kyiv, right north of Kyiv. And had they taken the airport, the concern is they very easily could have taken Kyiv next, that the war could have been over. Thank you, Charles. Once the capital falls, you're in trouble. Well, the Ukrainians were able to get their planes out in time, were able to fight back, get the Russians, and hold the airport long enough and basically destroy a lot of the Russian aircraft that it set the Russians really far back and frankly saved Ukraine so that the war now has gone on a long time. Anyway, the Ukrainians they love these commemorative pieces. They made this little commemorative piece out of the piece of helicopter of the Ka-52 Alligator. Thank you, Jess. And if you look, you can see the actual, I think, it says it on the bottom, shows a picture, says something like target destroyed, gives the actual coordinates. You can see there. It's got the coordinates on it, the helicopter. K-52 Alligators, the helicopter, and they made a trophy, so to speak, a piece of metal from the helicopter. Well, what's really neat about this, which I really like too, is this was a gift to us from, and you can see it fits together nicely, so it's a nice little piece like this. And I love the Ukrainians. There's the little code on there, the little whatchamacallit code, and if you scan it with your phone, it will show you video of the helicopter being shot down. Only Ukraine would come up with this. So you literally have video of the helicopter that this is. What's really neat about it is this was a gift. Thank you, Adventures. A gift from a children's hospice that we were helping, that we raised money for gifts and paper and stuff like, supplies for the children's hospice. And as a thank you, they gave us these, which was really neat. So yeah, so it was very, it was very, very beautiful too, sort of the story of how we got it. But anyway, it's a wonderful little piece. So that's being auctioned too. So we've got like 8 or 9 other, or I should say total things there. Thank you, Jetta. We've got 8 or 9 total things there. So go check them out. It's discord.aravosis.com. So go check them out. All right, guys, let's do, my hair is itching today, or my head's itching today. It's like showering doesn't matter. I'm like an allergy itch. So what's going on, guys? Let's talk about the news. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? Keeps showing up saying he's there, but no one believes him. Mustard very well could be. Mustard, are you back there again? Are you back there again? Sorry, let's see here. Actually, I wouldn't mind having Mustard join us. You want to join us and talk about Ukraine? It's up to you. Oh, the guy saying he's in Mariupol. I saw Mustard, though. I still want to get you to come on if you're up for it and talk sometime about what you've been doing. I'm not going to share any more than that, but up to you. But we can talk about it later. So anyway, what else is going on? That's okay. Yeah, I've got to prepare you for it in advance. No problem. All right, guys. So what else we got? Let's talk. Were the ships that got out escorted? I don't think so, Chris. Not by NATO. I doubt they were escorted by the Ukrainians either. That's a good question. I don't think so. Michael, I don't know what that means. Michael Johnson. I don't know what that. I don't know what any of that means. your question. Any news on Belarus? A little bit. Anthony is asking news on Belarus. Thank you for that, Anthony. The Belarusians are accusing Poland, a Polish helicopter, of flying, I don't know how far into Belarusian territory. The Poles say it's not true. I don't know. I don't particularly care. But that's really the latest on that. The other thing is, yesterday the Belarusians responded to the Poles and the Baltic countries and said, we're not going to kick Wagner Group out. So, so there. What else we got, guys? What country were the ships from? I don't know that's a good question. It didn't say where they were from. I shouldn't say where they're from, where they're flagged. The ships are typically flagged in Liberia or somewhere else. Thank you, Bonnie. It's hard to say. It's sort of like corporations in the U.S. They sort of just go whatever, whichever's the most convenient place to do it legally or financially. NATO had a P-8 Orion over there today. Oh, thank you, Jean, for saying that. Now, we've had a P-8 there before, which, surveillance plane. So it could be that it was there because of the grain ship. It also could be it was there anyway, and the grain ship is an added advantage. But yeah. But the P-8 is going to be observing, I'm assuming, and not really, jumping in if they need help. News on Prigozhin, still seriously dead, is the only news there is on Prigozhin, really. No news on that boy. BAE System, Tired Guy says, what do you think of BAE Systems setting up in Ukraine? So that's the British, military manufacturer. I guess I don't know enough of what the implication. It sounds okay. I don't know enough of the implications about it. I always worry at the idea, aerospace. Okay. I always worry about the idea of these sort of high profile military companies kind of going to Ukraine. Like, are they going to get bombed? I did see some article maybe a month or so ago that maybe it was the one about the Poles. Oh no, the Germans. It was about the Germans, Rheinmetall's coming in, and I think in some other German company. And it was saying how, one of the executives was saying, "Oh no, it's very easy to protect our factories over there." So basically, I don't know whether I don't know. I mean, whether the host country, in this case, the Brits or the Germans, provide like a Patriot missile system or something. But I was actually, I don't know if Callum's here tonight. If you could, I mean, I don't know, or any of the Europeans. It was very strange, but the business folks were not worried at all about their factories getting blown up. They said, no, we can defend them very easily. And I thought that was just very interesting, because I was like, how do you defend them very easily unless you've got a Patriot missile system or two, So anyway, but I mean, so, sounds good. I mean, I don't quite know what all the advantages are of doing it there. Yes, they were saying they're going to make the L-119 or 119, which is a howitzer. Also some other stuff they said too, but the howitzer was the one thing they were talking about. How good are Russia's spy satellites? They should be pretty good. I mean, they should be pretty good. I mean, we know traditionally, right? I mean, Americans are hopefully better, but still the Russians have got to have good spy satellites. I mean, I would just imagine they know where the plant is going to be. I think it's a matter of Mario saying Rheinmetall builds anti-aircraft weapons. Their own production can protect them. Okay, so maybe that's it then. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Dedeike. Good to see you. Thank you for that. Interesting. Okay. Any peace talks from the Ukrainian side? Well, here's the thing from the Ukrainian side. Putin has constantly said that it's not worth talking unless Ukraine first agrees that everything the Russians are occupying gets to stay in Russia. So if you're Ukrainian, you'd respond to that by saying, go to hell. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no way to respond. So it hasn't really, there hasn't really been any progress on that front. I mean, I would say this: if I were Ukraine, I might at least pretend to be open to negotiating with the Russians. I would say what the Russians are saying is ridiculous, but always happy to talk, because that goes over well in the West, where they're getting their weapons from. So I don't know. I mean, it's not just about diplomacy, it's about politics, and they've got to keep sort of showing to the West that they're trying, right? They're really trying for peace, but those darn Russians. So anyway, just, my take on it, but nonetheless, well, actually somebody did a wonderful tweet the other day. I forgot who it was, talking about, all right. Yeah. I thought you were a troll. All right. Thank you, Maverick. We have a troll on YouTube that just proved my troll theory, which is if you suspect someone's a troll, always wait until their second comment, because their second comment will prove that they're a troll. And that guy I just got rid of on YouTube, I smelled a troll, and his second one, totally, I went, okay, you're a troll. All right. So anyway, by the way, since somebody's about to get banned called Commie Bastard on TikTok, people who are proud of being communist today, who have no idea of the tens of millions of people killed by communism worldwide, but specifically in Europe. Communism oppressed half of Europe for 50 years. They took Europe hostage. The communists did. They killed these people. I was watching a video earlier today that I'd never seen before of people trying to flee East Germany, from communist East Germany, that was basically under the Russian thumb, communist government, and they would get shot to death by their government when they tried to leave. And these people were swimming across the river trying to beat the speedboat from the East Germans that were coming to kill them. I mean, any of these idiots who sit here, especially with his name, like, I'm Mr. Communist, I'm a communist. You get these young people who kind of like to play that game. I'm a Marxist, I'm a communist, this kind of crap. And you know what? Study a little history, but I'm seriously, like, I'm not talking as your dad. Thank you, Courtney. I'm talking as somebody who was alive in that era. And a lot of people died for that stupid ideology and those stupid countries that you're defending. They killed and murdered so many more. I mean, 30 million people Stalin killed. I challenge you to point out any excess that because these guys always love to criticize America. Point to any freaking war and find me 30 million people that the Americans killed, and you won't. You won't even get close to that. So yeah, what they did to Eastern Europe was a violation of what they did to those people. I mean, ask the Eastern Europeans how they feel about communism. I mean, give me a break. Mixed up with communism and authoritarian regime. we're not going to get into a discussion on communism here, but I dare you to find me a communist regime that isn't authoritarian or has not been authoritarian. That's the problem, but that's the problem. All of your friends have been authoritarian dictators who have murdered people. All of them are authoritarians. All of them. The Cubans, authoritarians, right? All of them. All right. Not going to do more on this. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, Hayes seems to have found the bulk carrier ship Ana Teresa from Liberia, of course, and Ocean Courtesy from the Marshall Islands. Yeah, they're usually from weird little places. The ships, in terms of where they're registered, they're kind of registered whatever is, I think, legally and financially convenient. It's sort of like companies that register their business down in the Cayman Islands and stuff. It's, they're not really from the Cayman Islands. Anyway, that's enough about. I just get annoyed about the communist stuff because a lot of us lived through that era and we saw what those people did, and it's just literally not a so. And by the way, and the communist parties in the West, to the one, was defending the murder of these regimes. The Communist Party wasn't against the Soviets, the Russians, right? They attacked us and they defended these people, and a lot of them ended up being traitors for those people, working as spies. Literally, they weren't like, oh, we're the good communists, those Russians are horrible. Oh, no. They were like, hello, Comrade Putin, or Comrade Khrushchev. In any case. All right. Let's move on. What else we got, guys? Anyway, it's been a good week. It's been a very good week. It's still going to take time, for Ukraine. It's not as if they've had the big breakthrough yet, but this is very good. What's going on, so Nicholas says, if Biden wins in 2024, will the money increase to Ukraine? Not necessarily. So the way it works, and David Penn, I'm going to guess maybe you had a question there. If you did, feel free to write it. You don't have to pay again for it. The issue is that the money has to be allocated by Congress. And if you don't have a friendly Congress or a Congress that agrees with you, you can't get the money. So just because Biden's reelected doesn't mean the money will be there. Thank you, JRD. Congress has to provide the money. Currently, Democrats control the Senate, Republicans control the House of Representatives. So the Congress is split between the two parties. Democrats will support Biden, but the Republicans have only got a very small majority, like by 4 seats. And, enough of them are anti-Ukraine, basically because Trump is anti-Ukraine, that the money's going to be interesting to see if we can get it. So my point is, just because Biden's reelected doesn't change the dynamic of he has to convince Congress or Congress has to agree to provide the money to keep Ukraine going. Now, having said that, I think the whole Republican political debate is going to be very interesting because Trump controls it, right? And Trump has been anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia and everything else. But it gets interesting because you still have enough Republicans who actually are real traditional Republicans, where they're conservatives, right? They're not friends of Russia. They believe in defending democracies. They believe in the defense of Europe. They get why we have to defend Europe. They don't like that we have to defend Europe, but they understand why we have to defend Europe, especially after 2 world wars. So if the Republican Party ends up killing aid to Ukraine and Putin ends up winning, I think you're going to see, I think in the end, here's the thing. I think in the end, the money will come because I think it's going to look really bad for the Republicans if they cut off Ukraine, because quite literally they're going to be helping Russia and in the end helping China too, because China's already involved in Ukraine. But if the money gets cut off to Ukraine, the Chinese are going to go, you know what? The Americans can't keep a fight going longer than a year. So, and there's a good point too from Gunnerman. Poland enters the war. That's a whole other interesting situation. Actually, that's a really interesting point, guys. This is very interesting. So we've been thinking all along about how, the U.S. to a degree, right, has helped put together this coalition. I think the U.S. has helped significantly to hold the coalition together, to sort of take the lead. The Brits have been great. Obviously, a lot of countries have been great. I know that. The Canadians, the Poles, the Baltics. But usually we think how I say we collectively, We've been trying to drag NATO along to do the right thing, to provide tanks, to provide planes, right? Um, and now, attack of missiles, etc. But what we don't think about is to what degree NATO is holding people back. If the NATO coalition were to fall apart, if the US were to cut aid to Ukraine, would Poland say, okay, that's it? You know what? From the beginning, we wanted to give them our planes, and you said no. We wanted to do this, we wanted to do that. Would Poland step in and do a hell of a lot more, including possibly moving troops into Western Ukraine? I mean, you could see the Baltic states too. I mean, ironically, you could see perhaps a better chance of war breaking out between NATO countries and Russia if the US were to pull out of the battle, because arguably we're constraining the countries that are more proactive. The Brits are more proactive than we are, right? Clearly, Biden's a little more cautious than the Brits. The Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, all of them way more wanting to do more than the US wants to do. So very interesting whether, we pull out, whether all of a sudden, and then, by the way, what happens is they get into war with Russia and then we're there anyway. Very stupid what's going on in terms of US policy on a lot of things right now. Oh, I did see that, Mike. I meant to mention this. Mike just brought up that the Russians have pulled up air defense systems from their the Kuril Islands. I forget what they call them, the North Islands, I guess they call them as well, which are some islands north of Japan that the Russians stole from the Japanese after World War II. And the Russians are so desperate for air defenses that they have had to pull up their air defense systems on their islands in the Pacific. We're talking 11 time zones away. I mean, thousands of miles away, to move them to Ukraine because they're so desperate for any kind of air defense. So very interesting. Very interesting. Poland, Kilo saying Poland is going to have a more powerful conventional military than the rest of Europe combined. South Korea is going to be a powerhouse too. That's interesting. That's interesting about South Korea. Yeah. No, we'll see. We'll see. But who knows? Will drones work well during the rainy season? There's a question. I don't know. Is there any reason drones wouldn't work well during the rainy season, folks? Help me out here. Any of our military experts? Can't imagine. I mean, well, okay. Okay, that's funny. Gringo Willie says, not the cardboard ones. That's true. Wind. Okay. You got to worry about wind. Commercial will be affected. Okay, so I guess if you're using satellite communications, that could be a problem based on the weather, right? I'm guessing here. Snow is a bigger problem. Well, sure, because snow would affect visibility, but does snow cause the same problem? I mean, can drones ice in the same way? I assume they can, in the same way a plane can. So like the drone has got an engine going on, so it's got some melting going on. But if it gets sleet, if it gets snow and it melts, but it's cold out, it freezes, and then the drone now has some of the same problem that a plane could have. Interesting. They may not fly high enough, but that's interesting. Now, is that because the ice is on it, that it's too heavy, or is it other issues with the air that they can't go as high? So the ice is weighing it down. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Visibility can be an issue too, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly a snowstorm, right? Ukraine will invent snow machine drones. They probably will, of course. Ukraine, I mean, God knows, right? The next crazy weapon from the Ukrainians. I mean, but ice will down the drone. Okay. Okay. So they'll just have to be careful with the weather. Yeah. Yeah. Props on drones don't ice the same way as large metal airfolds. Right. Heavy air, poor signal. Okay. Anyway, so yes, it's an issue. Okay. Good question, Mike. I hadn't thought of that. Is a good question. David, I don't know if you ended up having a question and we missed you. David Penn. If you did, feel free just to post it. Unless that was a gift. If it was a gift, thank you. Thank you anyway. But Carlos mentions the cardboard drones are coated with wax to make them water resistant, but right? I don't know if you want to be flying it in a snowstorm, though. Cold weather is not a problem. Now, cold weather affects batteries and things. I know that, right? So you might have that problem too. In the freezing weather, drones, depending how the drone's powered, I assume it's powered by batteries, right? I guess depends on the drone, but that could be an issue, right? Anyway, what else we got, guys? That was interesting. What else we got? Ugh. Anyway, we can go a couple more questions, and then maybe we'll even go to Discord a little bit tonight. Actually, what we'll do is we'll finish up. I will check with Mom as to what she wants to do about dinner, because we have a Costco lasagna that takes an hour. So I could always throw that in, and then we do a little Discord if I can survive till 7 o'clock. There's really no update about Wagner, really. Bungs. There's just no update about Wagner. I mean, Geopoliticus, I'm going to assume maybe some of the Ukrainians can ask about daily life in Kyiv. I mean, the thing is, in the capital, this is, I think, the weird. I mean, I can guess just from the news stories I read. Most of the attacks in the capital are getting shot down because they've got the air defenses. The problem is, when they get shot down, you still have debris that falls. And the other day, some of the debris that got shot down, so some of the Russian missiles or drones or whatever that got hit blew up, but they fell down and they killed two people in the Ukrainian capital. So you still do have a risk there. And they've got the air raid sirens, because I follow a lot of people online there in Kyiv. They've got air raid sirens going off 3, 4, 5 times a night, and they're supposed to go to shelter. So imagine 5 times a night while you are sleeping, having to run downstairs and go to shelter. It's got to be horrible, right? So I would imagine there's a real psychological drain, even though during the day, they then go on their regular day, right? And they know at night in Kyiv, they're probably not going to get killed. But I would think probably not going to die is still rather stressful, right? I mean, if I had to tell you, you're probably not going to die tonight, but 2 people will in a city of 2.5 million people. I think that's the population, right? I mean, I hate to answer for the Ukrainians, but I know from talking to Vlad and other people, life goes on, but and of course they're seeing the sandbags, they're seeing all sorts of stuff to remind them anyway. But I think it's got to be the nighttime sirens going off has got to be the worst. Imagine 5 times a night. It's a really good question, Brandon. I mean, okay, this gets into areas that I am not as much of an expert, because you're getting into all sorts of U.S. history here. Brandon asks a really interesting question. Why are the Republicans in the U.S. Senate so much more pro-Ukraine than the Republicans in the U.S. House? Part of this, you're going to have to look at geography. For example, a U.S. senator represents a state, an entire state. The U.S. has 50 states, okay? A state may include, in the South, some of the states are conservative across the board. In other places, a state can include a conservative, a liberal city and a conservative countryside, right? So that senator has to be a little more careful, because maybe he or she needs both votes, right? So he has to worry about people in the middle. So in the Senate, you often find people that are a little more reasonable than the House, I will say. A little more. You find more extremes in the House. The other issue, and maybe the same thing, is, actually, I know part of the other issue. In the United States House of Representatives, a thing has been done by Republicans and Democrats too. Republicans have done a better job of it recently than Democrats have, called gerrymandering, where basically a congressional district, you've got, I know 435 members of the United States House of Representatives, 100 senators, but 435 representatives. So the representatives in the House are governing a much smaller area of land, right? I don't know what the populations are. It could be 50,000 people, who knows, right? But it's a much smaller area of land. Those districts are drawn to protect their own parties, and the Republicans have done a better job than Democrats for a lot of reasons, including elections, meaning elections in states and everything else. So the Republicans have a lot of districts that were drawn super conservative, so that the person getting elected is always going to be super conservative. And that district is way more conservative than any single American state. Texas is a conservative state, but Austin and other big cities even it out. So all of a sudden, Texas starts to become almost in between in some ways, even though it's not, right? But when you get to a small district, it can be crazy. It can be crazy left or crazy right. So in the House overall, you have certainly seen on the Republican side, Democrats, I don't know as well. Thank you, Tugas. On the Republican side, you have seen a much actually the Senate too, you've seen them become, I don't want to say more conservative. You've seen them become more You saw them earlier on becoming more conservative. Now they're becoming more MAGA. And MAGA is its own problem because Donald Trump is anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia. So, right? I mean, that is the MAGA problem with Ukraine. If Donald Trump said Vladimir Zelensky was a saint and Vladimir Putin was the devil, you would find House Republicans would want to give Ukraine all the money in the world. But this is all about Donald Trump as far as what's happening with them. But they are certainly more conservative and more amenable to somebody like Trump. But anyway, I'm not even sure about all the answers, but it's a lot of stuff with how the districts were drawn and more conservative members. And again, Trump caused a lot of problems. I mean, but what's interesting is that the Senate, even though they do what Trump wants on foreign policy, they're like, no, I don't think so. Anyway, I don't know how much more could be done on the sanctions, Daniel. I don't know because so much of the sanctioning now is fine tuning that the West is doing. They're looking at ways that things are slipping through and what can be done to tighten them. And that's very, way over my head, basically, All right, guys. All right. I think I'm gonna. Now that's funny. Okay, Keps raised one last point I'm going to mention, then I'm going to do a summary, and then we'll go to Discord. So Keps is saying, thank you, Super Hornet. Appreciate the gifts on TikTok. Keps is saying, I've seen the report, or have you seen the report about Russians complaining that the government won't activate air raid warnings when drone attacks are coming? I have not seen people complaining. I did see the observation that Putin is not having it done. So when Ukrainian drones are attacking Moscow, they're not lighting up the air raid sirens. Thank you, Master Blast. Master Blaster. See, I see Master Blast on the top. That works too. That the Ukrainians are, the Russians are not setting off the air raid sirens when the Ukrainian drones are attacking Moscow every night. Now they're doing it for political reasons because Putin really doesn't want air raid sirens going off in Moscow every night because people would be unhappy about that too. But, I guess part of it too is the Ukrainian drones haven't really killed anybody yet, right? In Moscow. So you could argue they don't need to. Yeah, they're trying not to cause alarm, but they're also trying not to cause alarm because alarm would make people be upset at Putin and think he's not defending the city. So anyway, Mike says explosions reported at the Kerch Bridge. Hopefully, is there more? I'll do a quick little look and see if there's any Kerch news on my all my military and defense friends on TikTok, and then we'll get going, guys. 1 second here. All right, let's take a quick look here. All right. Nope. Nah. Maybe there's something with Kerch Bridge, but it hasn't been picked up by anybody yet. They're not really talking about it. So I'm suspicious, but you never know. Ukrainians do seem to go after that bridge on Friday nights. Fridays and Saturdays, they love going after that bridge. It's funny. But no, doesn't seem to be any big discussion of it on the. All right, guys, let me do a quick summary of the issues that we talked about today, and then I will go. Thank you, NJ Patman. I'm sorry, who else do we have? Did I miss anybody? Karen for the rose. Thank you, Karen. I was looking down for the rose. I apologize for that. All right, do a quick summary here, and then let's go to Discord for a little bit. Not too long. Day 555 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. I was saying that our tires have arrived. We did a fundraiser for tires for Ukrainian ambulances, helping the military and civilians, and the tires arrived. I showed you guys a quick little video. We've got our coffee talk tomorrow. That is at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, US. Join us on Discord. Join us on Discord for all of you folks that are monthly subscribers, for the paid monthly subscribers, and the Sasha News Network, our SNN TikTok subscribers can join us on TikTok. At 11 o'clock, and usually we hang out. Vlad joins us from Ukraine. It's fun. Quick little up, just kind of talk about, just small intimate group. Politico, Ukraine is slated to receive the first 10 of 31 promised Abrams tanks in the next 2 weeks. Reuters reports that the Biden administration will for the first time send armor-piercing depleted uranium munitions to Ukraine. That'll be announced next week. Russian media reports a fire in a factory workshop that produces electronics for missiles near Moscow. The Wall Street Journal, I did a big talk through this article talking about basically what the Ukrainian strategy is going to be in terms of the counteroffensive, taking the town of Tokmak, whether they'll sort of stay outside and fire from the outside. Kind of hard to summarize, but it's a good article in the Wall Street Journal today. You can always look at the repeat over on YouTube. My show's there afterwards. 2 ships have left Odessa Oblast in Ukraine. 2 more ships have escaped and basically gone through Ukraine's new grain corridor that the Russians so far have not touched. Very interesting. The Russians bragged about their new intercontinental ballistic nuclear missile, the Sarmat-2, the Satan-2 is ready to go. And nobody cares because we've still got nukes. It's nothing new. It changes nothing. If they attacked us, we would attack them. I mean, it just changes absolutely nothing. And then I did a long discussion on a CNN article talking about teenage Ukrainian kids who have been kidnapped by the Russians, and CNN interviewed them to find out just about how badly they were treated by the Russians who were trying to brainwash them into becoming Russian. Really sick stuff. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that on TikTok. All right, guys, let's head over to Discord. I'll go for a few minutes. I also want to check in with Mom about what she wants to do about dinner. It's discord.aravosis.com. I will actually, what I'll do is I'll sign off, go to Discord right now, log in so you guys see I'm around, and then go check with Mom really quick. But otherwise, good seeing you guys. I will be around tomorrow morning, like I said, 11 a.m. Eastern Time US for the paid monthly subscribers. Join us on Discord, where you see I've got an event already created. You guys on TikTok, same thing. Otherwise, come back Monday, and we'll do this all over again, 6 p.m. Eastern Time US. All right? All right, thanks, guys. Good to see you all. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you, moderators, as always. And thank you all for coming. Always appreciate hanging out. Have a good weekend now that it's the end of summer. All right, guys. Have a good night. I'll join you over at discord.aravosis.com. All right. All right. Boop.